Alright mates, how's it going? In today's video, it's chapter 4 of The Last Guardian by Jeff Grubb. Time to get out of the tower and meet some new people and touch some grass and stuff. Let's go! The air rushed out of Khadgar's lungs as he struck the ground, but he didn't die, because he landed on a pile of leaves or a haystack or something. However, he wasn't out of the woods yet, so to speak. Khadgar then heard movement and voices, so he quickly hid as best he could, despite feeling like he'd just been hit by a truck. The voices were barking in an unfamiliar tongue, a language that sounded guttural, and the opposite of friendly. But there was no mistaking that they were definitely searching for him. They'd seen him fall, and they were now shambling through the wreckage. Something tickled at the back of Khadgar's brain, but he couldn't quite place it. He was too busy slowly backing out of the clearing, hoping the darkness would keep him hidden from these creatures. But that plan failed, because he backed right into one of the creatures he was trying to escape from. And as he turned, he realised the thing that had been tickling his brain was recognition. He'd seen these monsters before, in that vision he'd had. The beast pointed its spear at the youth and let out a bellowing challenge. However, its challenge was cut short, because Khadgar instinctively muttered a word of power, raised a hand, and unleashed a small bolt through the creature's midsection, straight up murdering it. Khadgar then stood in stunned silence at the thing he just did, but only for a moment, because the monster's roar had alerted the others. It was impossible to know just how many exactly were now converging on Khadgar's location, but it was definitely a lot, and the youth knew he didn't have the power to beat all of them. Just that one bolt had already made him quite sleepy. But choosing it wasn't really an option either. These monsters probably knew this dark swamp that surrounded them better than he did. There was no sign of Medivh up in the sky. On the one hand, he could have landed somewhere and was now sneaking up on the monsters, but on the other, he may have just completely forgotten Khadgar existed again and gone home. So Khadgar really only had one option. It wasn't the greatest option, but perhaps these monsters were a bit dumb. Perhaps he could trick them into believing he was powerful and scare them away. So he grabbed the slain monster's grisly spear and strode purposely towards the beasts. The monsters watched cautiously as he approached, probably wondering what the balls he was doing, and Khadgar then tossed the spear into the fire and summoned a bit of flame in his own hand. Leave or die. One of the brutes took a few steps towards Khadgar, so he muttered another word of power and blasted the green non-human right in the face. Flee! Or face the same fate. Khadgar could barely make eye contact with the monsters, and he felt like he was about to shit himself. This would be a good time for his bluff to work, because he'd fired off 2 mystic bolts now, and he probably didn't have a third in him. However, a high cackling laugh then filled the air. The green warriors parted, and another figure shambled forward. This one thinner and more hunched than the others.
Human wants to play at the spells. Northgrin can play.
Leave! Now! Northgrin merely laughed, again at Khadgar. The youth's voice had started to waver, and his bluff wasn't really fooling anyone. However, as the robed orc took a step toward Khadgar, 2 brutes to his right suddenly burst into flames, and in the place where the creatures had been, now stood Medivh. My apprentice told you to leave. You should have followed his orders.
Northgrin knows you, human. You're the one.
Are you alright, lad? Fine. However, Khadgar was not fine. He was exhausted, and he immediately collapsed to his knees. Rest. Recover your strength. The worst is over. Khadgar nodded, but then looked at the burned monster bodies around them. Those things. What were they? Orcs. Those were orcs. Now, no more questions for the moment. The sound of hooves then filled the air. The cavalry. Too loud and too late, but don't tell them that. They can pick up the stragglers. Now rest. Khadgar must have indeed drifted off for a bit, because the next thing he knew, he was surrounded by soldiers. The background had changed, and Medivh was talking to some stocky older man who had the weathered face of a person who'd seen some shit. Khadgar, this is Lord Anduin Lothar. Lothar, this is my apprentice, Khadgar of the Kirin Tor. Khadgar's mind then started to race. Bloody hell, it was the King's champion. Boyhood companion of both King Lane and Medivh. Bit of a celebrity. And also, bloody hell, did Medivh just say Khadgar was his apprentice? So you finally got an apprentice. Had to go to the Violet Citadel to find one, eh, mate? Find one of suitable merit? Yes. What's this one done to impress you? Oh, the usual. Organised my library. Came to Griffin on the first try. Took on these orcs, single-handed, including a warlock. He organised your library? I am impressed. Lord Lothar, your skill is known even in Dalaran. Rest, lad. Don't worry. We'll take it from here. You won't. Not if you stay on the road. The King's Champion blinked in surprise. The lad's right, I'm afraid. The orcs already seem to know their way around this swamp. They seem to know the Black Morass better than we do. If we stay on the roads, they can run circles around us. Maybe we can borrow some of those griffins of yours to scare. The dwarves that train them may not take kindly to that. We'd be better off talking to the gnomes. They have a few whirligigs and sky engines that would be more suitable for scouting. Lothar nodded and rubbed his chin. How did you know they were here? I encountered one of their advanced scouts near my domain. After a bit of squeezing, he told me there was a large party looking to raid here. I had hoped to arrive in time to warn them. A young soldier, little more than Khadgar's age, then hastily approached. A survivor, me lord. Pretty badly chewed up, but alive. Mages, could you come take a look? Of course. Lothar, stay with the boy. He's still a little woozy from everything. And then the Master Mage buggered off. Khadgar tried to rise and follow him, but the King's Champion placed a heavy gauntlet on the youth's shoulder and held him down. However, Lothar then regarded Khadgar with a smile. So, the old coot finally took on an assistant. Apprentice. He's had many assistants. They didn't last. Well, so I've heard. I recommended a few of those assistants. They came back with tales of a haunted tower and a crazy demanding mage. What do you think of him? 'Twas Khadgar's turn to blink for a moment. In the past 12 hours, Medivh had attacked him, shoved knowledge in his head, dragged him halfway across the country, and then left him to face off against a handful of orcs. But then he did rescue him, and there was that really cool time where he called him his apprentice and stuff. He is more than I expected. Ha! Yeah, he's more than anyone expected. That's one of his good points. Lothar then rubbed his chin in thought again. That was a very polite, diplomatic response. Lordaeron is a very polite, diplomatic land. So I've noticed. Dalaran ambassadors seem to be able to say yes and no all at the same time. And say nothing as well. No offence. None taken, my lord. How old are you, lad? 17. Why? Huh. Makes sense. What makes sense? Lord Magus Medivh, was a young man, several years younger than yourself when he fell ill. As a result, he never really dealt much with someone of your age. Ill? The Magus was ill? Yeah, seriously. He fell into a coma. Lane and I took him to Northshire Abbey. The Holy Brothers there fed him broth to keep him from wasting away. He was like that for years, and then, poof, he woke up, right as rain. Or almost. Almost. He fell asleep a teenager and woke up a grown man, so I worry about him.
Khadgar then thought about Medivh's temperament, his mood swings. Perhaps if he was a younger man, his behaviour would make a little bit more sense.
His coma. It wasn't natural. He calls it a nap, as if it were perfectly reasonable. But we never found out why it happened. I mean, he might have figured it out, but he's shown no interest in the matter, even when I've asked.
I'm Medivh's apprentice. Why are you telling me this?
Lothar then sighed deeply.
I worry about him. He's alone in that tower.
He has a Castellan, and there's Cook,
with all of his magic.
Ah, hence trying to get apprentices in there, to spy on your friend, Khadgar thought. You worry about him, but you also worry about that power of his.
Well, what can I do to help? Keep an eye on him. If you're an apprentice, he should spend more time with you. I don't want him to
fall into another coma. Because you need him, Khadgar thought to himself. Because there's orcs suddenly everywhere. I would be honoured to help you both, Lord Lothar. Know that my loyalty must be to the Master Mage first, but if there is anything a friend would need to know, I will pass it along.
Lothar then gave Khadgar another heavy pat with his gauntlet.
There's something else. Has the Lord Magus spoken of the Guardian to you?
I've heard the name, spoken from Medivh's lips, but I know nothing of the details.
Ah, let's just pretend I didn't say nothing.
I'm sure we'll talk of it in due course, though. After all, I've not been his apprentice for very long.
Lothar then raised an eyebrow.
Well, how long have you been his apprentice?
Counting until dawn tomorrow. 1 day.
Medivh then chose that moment to return. He and Lothar exchanged glances, with the Major simply shaking his head and Lothar frowning deeply. Guess the survivor didn't make it after all.
Are you up for travel? Well enough. Don't know if I can handle a griffin, though. It's just as well. Your mount got spooked and cheesed it. We'll have to double up.
Medivh then blew some kind of whistle.
So, I'm your apprentice? Yes.
I passed your tests.
Yes.
I'm honoured, sir. I'm glad you are, because now starts the hard part.
And we'll leave it there! I'm going to have to start keeping track of which accent belongs to which person, I think. Otherwise this series is going to start getting real messy. What have we got so far? We've got my voice. We've got slightly higher pitched, slightly posher voice. We've got a West Country accent. And now we've got like a slightly Cockney voice. I really hope these people don't all end up in the same room soon. As usual, links in the description for the book, my Patreon page, my Discord, all of that stuff. If you enjoyed this video, like, subscribe, and all of that bollocks. And all that's left to say is, thanks for watching, and see ya!